firsthand experience. I come from a old New England WASP family characterized by what I call the WASP triad, which is alcoholism, mental illness, and politeness. And so my family was pretty chaotic, but they were wise enough to send me away. And so starting in fifth grade at the age of 10, I went to a boys' boarding school outside of Boston called Fessenden. It's since become co-ed, but I boarded there for 4 years and found the structure and stability that I needed. I had no idea at the time that I had two conditions that are commonly regarded as learning disability. I didn't know when I was sent away at age 10 that I have dyslexia and what we now call ADHD. I just knew I was different. I was left-handed, actually what's called mixed dominant. I eat and write with my left hand, do everything else with my right hand. And I was, I knew I came from a pretty crazy family. I loved them. There were no way abusive or anything like that, but it was just always topsy-turvy. Everyone was, drunk or crazy or both, but they were loving, and that's what mostly matters. Anyway, so off I went to Fessenden and learned unintentionally from the structure of that school how to manage my two quirkinesses, ADD and dyslexia. And then with that background, I went on to Exeter, which is a prep school in New Hampshire. I don't know if you're familiar with it down in Texas, but it's a wonderful boarding school. And when I went there, it was all boys as well, but it's now co-ed. And then after that, I went to Harvard, and where I majored in English and did pre-med. Again, you see the two sides of the brain. Then I went down to New Orleans to Tulane Medical School, which I absolutely loved. And then I came back to Harvard for residency in psychiatry and then a fellowship in child psychiatry, which is where I learned about the condition that was then called ADD, attention deficit disorder, in 1981. If you'd told me before 1981 that someone had attention deficit disorder, I would have thought it was some psychoanalytic term for someone who hadn't gotten enough attention. Anyway, that moment of learning about that condition was a huge aha moment in my life, because not only did I realize I had it, I also realized in this moment of insight that we ADD folks have, that the medical model only got it half right. It left out all the positives, which makes sense because, in medicine, we're concerned with pathology. But the deficit disorder model left out all the good stuff, which I'll tell you about. Excuse me, I'm sorry. David suggested that I give you 10 top 10 tips, which is always good. It's a nice way of organizing. So I'll do that. But before, I want to just give you 3 models and a framework as to what this condition is. The framework is I don't treat disabilities. I help people unwrap their gifts. And so the minute someone tells me they have ADD, my response, I still call it ADD, by the way, because that's what it was when I learned about it. My response is, oh, aren't you lucky? Now let me help you find your gift. And some people say, well, if it's such a gift, where do I return it? Because they haven't had good luck in finding their gift. But that should be your framework. You're on the search of talent, so you can help develop it and promote it. Now, of course, along the way, you've got to take care of the obstacles too. This is certainly not an unmitigated gift. It can ruin your life if you don't know what's going on. But that framework is a good one to have because it keeps you always looking for the spark, the sparkle, the talent. The man who discovered the PCR test, you've all heard of that we use for COVID, stands for polymerase chain reaction. He had flaming ADD, and back in 1993, this came to him as out of nowhere. And in 15 minutes, he put it together. And he said, I've read his autobiography, that in those 15 minutes, he knew he'd won the Nobel Prize. And indeed he had. And that's what we're capable of. As much as we're capable of destroying the kitchen in 5 minutes, we're also capable of winning Nobel Prizes. 3 models that I suggest, in addition to the gift, it's as if we have a Ferrari engine for a brain. We have a brain of titanic power, but we have bicycle brakes. So it's hard for us to control the power of our imagination, the power of our brain. And so basically, I'm a brake specialist. The second model is, think of Niagara Falls. We're like Niagara Falls, colossal energy, colossal power. But until we build a hydroelectric plant, it's just a lot of noise and mist. But once we build that hydroelectric plant, we can light up the state of New York. So imagine your child like Niagara Falls, and this school and you parents and I are in the hydroelectric plant business. We're trying to find a way to channel that tremendous energy and brilliance into a way that it can be productive and light up the state of New York. And then the final one is sort of what it feels like to have ADD but not have it treated. And I come back to my model of a car. It's as if you're driving on square wheels. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It takes a lot of effort to go 5 feet. But as your choir put it in the opening wonderful song, we don't give up. We just don't give up. I mean, even my being with you right now, I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't say, let's just not do it. I said, let's make it happen. And sure, I'll suffer a little pain, but so what? I've got a message I want to deliver. So if you can round out those wheels, then you don't have to rely on just grit and hard work alone. And so I guess you could say I'm in the wheel rounding out business. Okay, good. All right, here are my 10 tips. The first one takes me back to my first grade year in Chatham, Massachusetts, in 1956, when I was 6 years old. So I'm 72 now. And I showed up for first grade and I couldn't read. And you're supposed to learn to read in first grade. Well, the diagnosis then for kids who couldn't read, they didn't have the stuff we have today. Your diagnosis is you were stupid. And your treatment plan was to try harder. Well, I was lucky. I had a first grade teacher named Mrs. Eldridge who knew there was more to it than stupid. And there was better ways to help them than try harder. So during reading period, she'd just come over and sit down next to me and put her arm around me. She wouldn't excuse me from reading, but she would sit next to me with her arm around me. So when it would come to be my turn and I'd stammer and stutter, none of the other kids would laugh at me because I had the mafia sitting next to me. Well, that was my treatment plan. It was Mrs. Eldridge's arm. By the end of the year, I was still the worst reader in the class, but I was the most enthusiastic, terrible reader. You see, the part of me that had talent with words was able to get activated because Mrs. Eldridge's arm took out of the equation the true learning disabilities, which are shame and fear and believing you can't do it. That's what holds someone back. uh, not not uh, not ADD or dyslexia. That arm, that arm took away the true disabilities of shame and fear. And thanks to that arm, I majored in English at Harvard while doing pre-med. I am a very slow reader. That arm couldn't cure the dyslexia. But the talent I've got was able to power through, and I remain an incredibly slow reader. Takes me forever to read a book. My wife says, I don't know how you know anything. You read so slowly. But I did have to know a few things to, to do what I've done. Mrs. Eldridge's arm is the most important advice I can give you. Make sure your kids have that arm around them. Make sure, I have it around me still, and I'm 72 years old. It's the most important thing you can do, is make sure that arm is around them and stays around them. They feel comfortable being who they are. They don't acquire the disabilities of shame and fear. That's what holds a person back, not dyslexia or ADD. Most important thing I can tell you today is get that arm around you, however you do it. All the techniques, all the special interventions, all the tutoring, all the wonderful science we've learned since 1956 helps a tremendous amount. But without that arm, it won't do very much. However, with that arm, well, the Nobel Prize, the sky's the limit. Is to revise your expectations. These kids are not going to be, Joe or Jill normal. They're not going to see the towel on the bathroom floor. It's not that they won't pick it up. They don't even see it. They won't see the cupboard left open. They won't see the dirty glass of milk left next to the TV. They won't see it, you see. And so you have to revise your expectations. You don't have a kid who sees what other kids see. On the other hand, you've got a kid who can see a lot that other kids can't see. Our great gift is imagination. And so, if you take that into account, you're encouraging the imagination while you're providing tips and structures to help make up for what they can't see. And that leads me to the third tip, which is to revise the moral diagnosis. It's the devil that haunts these children, that if only you tried harder, you could fix everything. That's about as helpful as telling someone who's nearsighted, if only you could squint harder, you could fix yourself. Don't condemn these kids to a life of squinting and feeling bad that it doesn't work. That's the moral diagnosis. Instead, you want the medical diagnosis that says they can't see certain stuff and they need help with remembering, with observing, with following through. The fourth tip is to use a team approach if you can. If you're a single parent, well, create a team out of friends, relatives, teachers, medical people, whatnot. If you're lucky enough to have a partner in parenting, makes the world of difference, because raising a kid with this condition is labor intensive. My wife and I have 3 of them. They're now 33, 30, and 27, and they're doing great. But believe me, when they were 10, 7, and 4, my wife would look at me sometimes and say, why couldn't we have had simple kids? And I say, I don't know, but we don't. And so, we got in line and did what we had to do, and we did our best to unwrap their gifts. And I like to believe that we've in fact succeeded at that. Most of all, at the ages of 33, 30, and 27, They love life. They're full of exuberance. And they've found their hydroelectric plant, if you will. They've found a way of turning their power into productivity. The fifth tip is to remember boredom, i.e., lack of stimulation, is kryptonite for us. For us who have ADD, we can't, not won't, we can't tolerate boredom. We can't tolerate the lack of stimulation. So when we encounter it, we bounce off of it. We're out of there, if not physically, then mentally. It's not lack of discipline. It's a law of physics. We can't do boredom. Like nature abhors a vacuum. We can't do boredom. And we just make something happen, either in our imagination, or we'll pick a fight, or we'll throw a spitball, or we'll make some grossly inappropriate remark to make things happen. There's a man who was very good at doing this throughout school in the Midwest. He went to a Lutheran school. And whenever he got bored, he had the ability to make people laugh. Well, the teachers didn't like that. And so he got paddled in this Midwestern school weekly, all the way through school. They did it up into high school. And you know, he was really horribly treated by the administration of the school, physically abused, and not in a, you know, kind way. Well, did he turn bitter, as many do? Did he turn to drugs, as many do? The substance use disorder is way higher in us. Did he drop out and become marginalized, as many of us do? Did he give up, contrary to the song you sang at the beginning today? No, he did none of those things. You've all probably heard of him. His name is Dave Pilkey, and he writes the Captain Underpants series. He's become a friend of mine, and he has both ADHD and dyslexia. His books have gone on to sell over 80 million copies. And I can tell you, as an author, I think, oh, damn it. I think I've done well because I've sold 2 million copies. Well, Dave has sold 80 million copies. And in spite of being misunderstood in school. So keep in mind that boredom is kryptonite. And so what you want to do is try to take tedious tasks and turn them into games. Try to make them interesting. So have chores, but try to make the chores interesting. Turn making your bed into a battle against ghosts under the sheets, or turn brushing your teeth into your brush versus the alien invaders called bacteria. However you do it, try to make a game out of chores. But it is important to have chores. Seventh tip is to get rid of punishments. They don't work. They just don't work. And you know, back in the days of spanking and grounding and all these punishments, they didn't work. Whether or not they were, you know, correct and right, they didn't work at the most basic level. Kids with ADD, you can spank them all day and they'll say, bring it on, do it again, you know, because it's stimulating. And it's way counterproductive. It's alienating, it's demotivating, it sets up a battle between parents and children. It's a completely no-win game. So you got to get creative and get in the incentive business. Now watch out, because these kids are born entrepreneurs. You give them a dime and they'll quickly having you give them $1. But that's the part of them you want to engage, the entrepreneurial, reward-seeking, reward-responsive part. And get out of the consequence and punishment model. I'm telling you, it doesn't work. And you can learn that for yourself, or you can be a little bit more creative and proactive and set up a model that's based on incentives and rewards. Number 8, beware of the big struggle. The big struggle happens all the time in families where there is ADD. you start fighting with each other. Now, the kid with ADD loves it because, like I said, boredom is kryptonite, but a struggle is captivating. It's engaging. And if you can get your mom and dad fighting with each other, it's even better. And then if you can get your sibs involved, well, it's like going to the movies. And, math homework is long forgotten as the struggle plays itself out, like an episode of Law and Order, and you just, I'm saying to parents all the time, don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. If conflict arises, first thing you should do is sit down. And next thing you should do is lower your voice or be silent. Lower the stimulation. Conflict tends to escalate stimulation. The content is irrelevant. The content is irrelevant. Please get that through your heads. The content is irrelevant. Love, truth, and values are not what's at stake. What's at stake is trying to lower the level of stimulation to the point that it becomes manageable. Otherwise, you have just a slow motion train wreck. Which many families in which there is ADD, that's how they begin their day, and that's how they end their day. Trying to get dressed and get out the door, slow motion train wreck, and then trying to get homework done and go to bed, slow motion train wreck. Instead, try to work with somebody, your partner, or a therapist, or a teacher, or a wise person, and come up with a structure, a process, a set of incentives that will not only get done what needs to get done, but also, guess what? Turn it into fun. My first rule of parenting, by the way, my favorite book that I've ever written, I've written 21 books, and my favorite was a book about raising children called The Childhood Roots of Adult Happiness. It has nothing to do with ADD, but it has everything to do with it because it was about raising kids and basically how we raised ours. The first rule of parenting I suggest in that book is enjoy your children. If you have fun with them, it's almost for sure that you're doing it right. Unless you're, just smoking pot with them all day. But short of that, if you're having fun with them, it's almost for sure you're doing it right. And guess what? Not only is it a great gift to them, it's a great gift to you. The most important thing a parent, I think, ever does in his or her life is raise our children. And when you have your first child, I'm sure you all remember it vividly as I do. When you bring your first child into this world by birth or adoption, you enter into a permanent state of psychosis. We parents, we go crazy with love. And it's a darn good thing we do, because what you have to do to raise a kid, you have to give up your time, your money, your dignity, your freedom, and we're psychotic. So we say, this is great. And then let's do it again. So we parents are asked a lot of, but we're given a lot with these kids, and particularly the kids you have, because contrary to popular belief, they're gifted. They're going to surprise the world. They're going to invent the PCR test, or they're going to open JetBlue Airlines as David Neilman did, or they're going to discover penicillin, and I can promise you, whoever invented the wheel definitely had this condition. So your kids may be taxing, difficult, chaotic, exasperating, and push you to your limits, which they absolutely will do. By the way, don't feel guilty if you have days where you're thinking, oh, why did we ever do this? That's only normal. But in the long run, these are the kids who are going to make a difference. So just get the right help. The ninth tip is structure, schedules, rules, expectations. All that stuff really matters. That's the stuff you set up outside of yourself and your child self to compensate for what's missing or inconsistent inside of you. You know, if you don't have a set of structure, rules, expectations, then everything you do every day is mood dependent. If you're in a happy-go-lucky mood, you say, fine, do whatever you want. If you're in an angry, vindictive mood, you start setting ridiculous limits. You know, so, and the kid gets totally confused and discombobulated. So what you need to do is set up outside of yourself a set of structures, expectations, rules. Get up time, go to bed time, dinner time, table manners, shake hands, make eye contact, all that kind of stuff that really does make a difference. And you can teach anyone where you put your book bag when you get home, where you put it, you know, all of that external structure to make up for inconsistent internal structure is absolutely essential. Now, the school provides a lot of that, and that's why you're lucky to go to the school. But then you need to back it up at home. But don't turn it into a struggle. Remember my previous suggestion, don't set up these structures and rules as a trap to instigate struggles, because that's what'll happen. And then you'll spend every morning and every evening fighting. That's not good. So you want to find ways of introducing structure in a way that's fun. And also it's fun not to have to come rushing home every time you leave the house because you forgot your homework or you forgot your shoes, you know, or the old line, I'd forget my head if it weren't screwed on. And that's the ADD way of leaving a house, by the way. You leave 3 times because you have to come back twice to get what you forgot. I still do it. I'm 72 years old and I'm still leaving the house twice to, you know, I don't have that much to remember. My wallet, my keys, my glasses, my pen, my briefcase. You know, I don't have that much to remember. You'd think I could do it. Well, I don't. So, you know, this is a gift that keeps on giving. But do I hate myself because of it? You see, this is a key point. No, I don't. I quite like myself. And by the way, don't set up as a goal that you have to love yourself. I hate that term. In my experience, an awful lot of people who love themselves really shouldn't. But you want to like yourself enough that you don't beat up on yourself all the time for these mistakes that do happen. That's what we do. But in exchange for that, you know, you see this over and over again. In exchange for the shortcomings and mistake proneness that we have to deal with, we have enormous gifts, imagination that is unmatched. Okay, and that leads me to my final tip, which is right up there with Mrs. Eldridge's arm in terms of importance. 3 words: never worry alone. You will worry. It's part of a parent's job. We worry from the moment they're born until the moment we die. Hopefully happens before they die. And just never worry alone. Of course you're going to worry. You should worry. But worrying alone usually becomes toxic. You awfulize, you pathologize, you globalize, you eat yourself up. When you worry with someone, instantly it becomes problem solving or a moment of laughter and humor. Do the following thought experiment. Imagine you're standing in a big warehouse alone in the dark. You get scared, you get paranoid, you start hearing voices. If you're in that same big dark warehouse with someone, you laugh. You don't feel afraid at all because you know you'll find a way out, or you'll find a way of enjoying the big dark warehouse, just the 2 of you. So never worry alone. And by the way, you should teach your kids that phrase, never worry alone. You know, it's very reassuring for them. And, you know, I mean, if you have God in your life, I happen to be an Episcopalian, so that's my framework. God is always with me. If you have a dog, the dog is, everyone should have a dog. The dog is with you. And then you've always got your mom, your dad, you hope, and teacher, friend. You want to line up all the people that you can worry with and then draw upon that every day. That's your source of greatest strength. It is in connection that we solve problems and that we achieve greatness and that we enjoy life. And that's, I'll leave you with that. I call it the other vitamin C, vitamin connect. The greatest gift you can give your child is not top grades and admission to top schools. That's fine. I'm not saying don't do that. But what I am saying as a priority, the most important gift you can give, the most valuable gift you can give your child is a connected childhood. And by that, I don't mean access to the internet. I mean, a connected family, connection to friends, connection to a dog, connection to nature, connection to the world of ideas, connection to community, connection to some version of what's beyond knowledge, and where we came from, where we're headed, all of that marvelous set of connections that constitute really the heart and power of life. I hope I've done justice to you. I know
yeah.
I couldn't
Dr.
walk around.
Hallowell. Dr. Hallowell.
Thank you.
So do we have some questions?
We're sort of wincing
Yes.
through the pain with you.
Oh,
so
gosh, yeah,
we,
we're so
we feel
sorry.
it when it comes out new, and it's just absolutely amazing, your message and your presentation. We really enjoy it and appreciate you coming here in this state of pain that you're in, and we just want to let you know that. But we do have some questions.
Good.
We do. And I'm
Actually,
just.
the first one is, what was tip number 6? We didn't get
What
that
was
one.
tip number 6?
Can we have you go back there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you who are online and you have questions online, I'm going to move the chat over here to a place where it's not blocking everything. There we go.
I'll just run them down 1 through 10.
Tip
So
number 6, Dr.
Okay,
Hallowell.
number 1 was Mrs. Eldridge's arm. Number
Okay.
2 was revise expectations. Number 3 was beware of the moral diagnosis. Number 4, use a team if you can. Number 5, remember boredom is kryptonite. Number 6 was have chores, but turn them into games and fun if you can. Number 7 was
Got it.
number 7 was go low on punishments and high on rewards. Number 8 was beware of the big struggle. Number 9 was structure, schedules, rules, expectations. And number 10 was never worry alone.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
And
Right.
I just wanted to let you know, we have a big crowd here in the auditorium, but we also have a bigger crowd online. So we have people typing in questions. And the first question I see is, what if a child displays signs of ADD at school, but not at home? And how can you assess that?
Technically, that's not ADD, according to the diagnostic manual.
Interesting.
You can't have it in one place and not in another. But that's just technically what it means. You got to do is you got to investigate, where it is happening and try to do something about it.
Okay.
So you can treat it as if it were ADD. It's just, and you can give medication, you can do the whole thing, but just know technically that's not ADD. You got to have it in multiple settings, and that
Sure.
in the life of a child, that means home and school, and in the life of adult, that means home and work.
Okay.
One other medication question from the in-person crowd here, Dr. Hallowell, is how do you determine the optimum dose of a stimulant?
Did you hear that, Dr. Hallowell?
Yeah. Stimulants are interesting because the dosing is not related to how big you are. Most medications are given on a milligram per kilogram basis, not stimulants. They're related to brain receptor sites that we can't measure. So what you do is you start with a lowish dose and you gradually increase it until you get target symptom improvement or side effects. Your body will tell you if the dose is too high, and the numbers you want to follow are weight, because it cuts your appetite, heart rate, because it can elevate heart rate, blood pressure, because it can elevate blood pressure, and sleep, because it can cause insomnia. So track those 4 variables: weight, blood pressure, heart rate, and sleep. And as long as those remain stable, you can keep increasing the dose until you get target symptom relief.
Okay. Yeah, I've got one more on the chat. Do you have a general position on medication for the ADHD kid? That option's always recommended by specialists, but we've avoided it because they just have avoided it because they were afraid of it.
I've got to reach for something and that causes pain. So
Sure.
I'm gonna go gingerly. There we go. Yeah, people ask me, do I believe in medication? And my answer is, it's not a religious principle. It's a medication. It's a tool. Like right now, I believe in Advil. Let's hope it helps. But that's what it is. It's a medication. It's a tool. And you want to keep it simple. If it helps and does not cause side effects, then use it. If it doesn't help or does cause side effects, then don't use it. The idea of avoiding it is almost always rooted in wrong information or lack of information or both. Once you get the information, unless it's against your religion, there's really no reason not to give it a try. And there's every reason to give it a try, because when it works, it's a godsend. And it makes all the non-medication interventions so much simpler. People come to me often. In fact, it's the rule, not the exception. And they say, we want your help, but we don't want to use medication. And I say, fine, I've written books about how to do exactly that. But I want you to know, it's sort of like saying, why don't we do a few years of squinting before we try eyeglasses? Eyeglasses are the proven, these meds have been researched up one side and down the other, dating all the way back to 1937, when amphetamine was first used to treat what we now call ADD. So there's a huge amount of research behind them. And used properly, they're very safe. And effective 80% of the time. So like I say, unless it's against your religion, as long as you find a doctor who knows what he or she is doing, it's worth a try, because when it works, oh my goodness, it's a godsend. I mean, you have no idea the people I have in my office just saying, why didn't I try this sooner? Why was I so afraid of it? And the reason you're afraid of it is the press does a terrible job. All they do is play up the fears. They stoke fears. And why do they do that? Because fear sells. Good news doesn't sell. So they're forever trying to scare us. And when it comes to meds, the average person, the average intelligent person, the average enlightened person, the average person who sends their kid to this school is anti-medication simply because they've heard so many bad stories. And it sounds like they're, drugging their child or something like that. If you learn about it, and you could get my latest book, ADHD 2.0, the last chapter is about meds. If you learn about it, you'll see it makes all the sense in the world to give it a try. If it doesn't work or causes side effects, you just stop it. And the beauty of these meds is they're in and out of your system the same day. So a trial doesn't have to last more than a few hours. But the side effects people should actually worry about are the side effects of not taking medication, which can be, a childhood full of disappointment and correction and underachievement and, feeling that you're defective and on of the side effects of poorly treated or undiagnosed ADHD.
Sure.
So, and believe me, I am not a shill for the drug companies at all. You heard my presentation. The central message is one of connection and building, unwrapping gifts. But at the same time, I just know that stimulant medication can make a big difference. All three of my kids take it, and it's been a huge difference in their lives.
Dr. Hallowell, can you comment a little bit on the research you've done with John Rady and on physical activity and ADHD and how that helps?
Yeah, my friend John Rady, a wonderful man, wrote a really groundbreaking book a few years ago called Spark, the Revolutionary New Science of Exercise and the Brain. And then since then, more specifically, Jeremy Schmaumann at Harvard Medical School has shown that a special part of the brain called the cerebellum is very connected to the part of the brain that controls ADD and emotion and executive function. And And what we found is that by doing exercises that stimulate the cerebellum, it's the best non-medication treatment for ADD you can find. And these are exercises that challenge balance. So for example, surfing, great for ADD, skateboarding, trampoline, standing on a wobble board, sitting on an exercise ball, anything that challenges balance really helps ADD. There's a program called the Zing program, Z-I-N-G, that where you can buy, they do it all over computer assessment using eye tracking, which is a good way to follow progress. And then a series of graduated exercises that you do 10 or 15 minutes a day. And if you do them faithfully, within a few months, you will definitely see improvement in symptoms. Go check it out. Go to Zing, just Google Zing, Z-I-N-G, it may be Zing Performance, I don't know, but the key word is Zing if you want to learn more about that cerebellar stimulation. And in general, as John says, exercise is miracle grow for the brain. It really is good for you. So he recommends in school that you have brain breaks during class where you stand up and dance, and that never deny kids recess. That's a really not smart thing to do. Let them go out and run around and what is the phrase? Motion is lotion, and it's good. Like what I need to do is stay in motion, not in certain kinds of motion, but special motion. Anyhow, very important. Not only good for your body, good for your brain, physical exercise. And your head, David, David is, I'm told he's quite a masterful athlete himself.
He keeps us all moving. Let's put it that way. We've got a couple more questions.
Well, yeah, we can, Dr. Hallowell, how about one more question from online, and then we'll let you go.
Right, and I'm going to ask the one relating to the kids, since we have parents in the audience. What if a kiddo has ADHD and anxiety, and how do you treat both?
Yeah, that's far more the rule than the exception. ADD and anxiety go together because, look, if you're being called out every other second, and if you're forgetting something every third second, and if you're making a mistake every fifth second, you're living in a state of constant anxiety. Well, what am I going to do wrong next? And so your walking assumption is I'm about to do something wrong, and I don't know what it is or how to prevent it. Well, that's the definition of a petri dish of anxiety. I start with treating the ADD with medication, with stimulant medication, because often when you get increased focus, you get increased control. And when you get increased control, anxiety goes down. Anxiety is rooted in a heightened feeling of vulnerability and a diminished feeling of control. So anything you can do to increase the feeling of control and reduce the feeling of vulnerability will reduce anxiety. And stimulant medication, by increasing focus, does exactly that. Now, for some people, an underlying anxiety disorder remains. And for those folks, you need to put them on a treatment program for anxiety, which is almost always a combination of coaching and medication. And the SSRIs, the Prozacs, the Lexapros, the Zolofts, those are the meds we use. And then the coaching, the therapy, can be anything. CBT is sort of the one everyone cites these days, but I don't think you need to get that specialized. I think more than anything else, these kids need a coach to help them develop strategies to get organized and not forget stuff, and a cheerleader to believe in them. My 12th grade English teacher changed my life forever by getting me to write a novel, and he did that simply by believing in me. So cheerleading is dismissed as superficial. It's anything but superficial. It is absolutely at the heart and soul of feeling good about life, about yourself, and of achievement. So have somebody who believes in you, who encourages you, who cheerleads you, who helps you get organized, and then get on a medication for your anxiety if you need it, if the ADD meds don't take care of it. But most of all, remember Mrs. Eldridge's arm. Just get that arm around that kid so he or she never has to worry alone. And then I can guarantee you, my wife says I shouldn't say 100%, but I do say 100%. 100% of people who go for help will improve. The only question is by how much? How much will they improve? And, you know, I'm still trying to improve. And as I've told you many times, I don't know why I keep saying I'm 72 years old. I think because it scares me, but I'm still trying to improve, you know, you know, you embark on a life of improvement, guided by the principles I've given you today. And I can honestly say, as much as I've been in pain, I really have given you the basics. And if you want to get more, go to my most recent book, ADHD 2.0. It's only 100 pages, by far my shortest book. I finally understood my audience. So it's short, it's pithy, it's to the point, it's practical. And by the way, I dedicated it to dogs. And I said, it's no accident that God spelled backwards is dog. So thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.
I
Thank
really
you, Dr. Hallowell.
hope I've been
We
helpful.
appreciate you coming up on our screen this morning and going through what you're going through. We really appreciate your message and feel that it's important for us to hear. So thank you again.
Well, the song your kids sang at the beginning really summed it up. I loved it. That was great. You know, that really is a wonderful message you guys had. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hallowell. We appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. I guess you tuned out. We're going to go ahead and end this.